things also, but obviously I'm going to give I'm going to censor all that. Anyway, friends, and Dr. Anshu, and my dear colleagues, my friends, it's a great honor. Welcome for attending this second lecture. And the topic is really hot, as you know, and the right person for the right job we have here is my colleague, my very dear friend, Rahul Sharma. Praful, I just wanted to check, is this event being recorded? Somebody's taking care of it?
Yes, sir. It
Yes,
is
sir.
being recorded.
Yes, sir. I'm recording this session.
Okay, excellent. So I will share that YouTube link so you can probably upload it there. Okay, now just to introduce Mr. Rahul Sharma, who is the the chief guest today, presenting this lecture on food and agriculture economy of India. It is a very interesting subject, and I think the times are really right. And Rahul has got a great amount of experience among all of us, especially in this particular area, and that's the reason we had requested him to enlighten us and share his thoughts and his views. Rahul has been working with Mahindras, and then he has done a lot of projects in the related field, and now he is a consultant. I have had the honor of meeting him in Dubai also when he was here for a project for Ashok Leyland, right? Yeah, so he comes with this immense knowledge and the relevant experience for this particular topic. And without taking much time, Rahul, I will request you to take it forward. And all those members, if you have any questions, please keep it towards the end. And, you will be more than welcome to ask. And, we'll be obliged to answer them. Over to you, Rahul.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you for all those kind words. While you were speaking, I was keeping my fingers crossed about what next sentence will you utter other than my other than my purely academic stream. Because you would be well aware, we were not the best when we were in college. Still now we are not the best, but I mean, we were even relatively not so good as we are now. Everybody can view my screen?
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
I can.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So typically, I passed out in 89 from D school, went on to do my master's and then MPhil from D school. As soon as I finished my MPhil, I joined a hardcore management consulting organization. Was there for about 8-9 years. Doing a lot of stuff on work on investment attraction strategies, and of course rural and agricultural related stuff, which used to land into my plate at that point in time. Went on. My last assignment was with Mahindra, as Deepak said, where I was looking after the rural strategy for the group. And I quit working in 2013 to start, something of my own, and that's what Primon Asia is all about. Went into this very niche area of automotive consulting. And I mean, that is pretty much that I was anyway doing as part of my stint at Mahindra. Though it was a corporate function there, but and more of rural. But then, fortunately, Mahindra has a very large footprint in rural India, and that's where this subject came in handy to me. And what I'm going to do is I have about 10 odd slides. One of the problems if you serve too long in a corporate kind of environment is you can't speak without slides. So others will have to excuse me, but I will try and do a lot more speaking than what is written on the slide. So I have about, I'll take about 30 minutes, and then all of you can, kind of ask if there are any questions or anything that, I may be able to answer. The topic itself is too vast, cannot be covered in, in any one session or one, single presentation. But what I have done, therefore, is to try and give all of you a bird's eye view of what it looks like, what are the changing paradigms, and what are the areas that we need to concentrate on. To, of course, people like Anshu ma'am, people like Kaushal sir, who are, and others who are so academically still involved into some kind of teaching or sharing with students. There are a few things, a few thoughts that I would like to leave them with, in saying, if we could bring in this into our, some kind of syllabi, or, I mean, I know it is there, it would be there as part of the syllabi, but if we could bring some practical knowledge there, it would really help our students, break new frontiers. So, with this, I would like to start my today's talk. Just to give you a brief background on, when I started looking at this area or this topic when it was given to me, and then, Kaushal sir just jumped in and said that, it is very topical and you should be speaking about this. So I thought that let me start from where it, let's say, all started, and not going too much into the history. I took a point of saying when we became, or when India became independent, and what was the situation like, and how it has been, till today. So just to put things in context, when we became independent, we were producing about 50 million tons of food grains. The problem was that the teeming millions had to be fed, and there wasn't enough food for everyone to have. Of course, it was an environment of hunger and scarcity, and not only hunger and scarcity of food had to be dealt with. The problem was that we were depending on other countries for very basic essential like food. And therefore, at that point in time, the emphasis was that we, become self-sufficient, self-reliant, have a food economy of our own. And therefore, that is what started shaping the agricultural policy of this country. One of the very early steps that were taken in this direction was when in 1966, with the help of Ford Foundation, we embarked upon this journey of bringing in modern methods of cultivation and, bringing in modern technology, things like high yielding variety of seeds, etc., to usher in something called a green revolution. Now, I'm sure all of you must be aware of this by now. Most of you would have studied it, somewhere or somewhere or other, and probably, it is the most often, spoken term these days when you hear about a lot of things like farm laws and, generally when you talk about agriculture. Just to delve a little deeper into this green revolution. So what happened was, when Ford Foundation came with the help of, the then government, they said that let us identify areas and districts which have a quick turnaround time possible. The quick turnaround time was an indication of saying where whatever we put in gives us faster results, and therefore a large number of districts of Punjab, large number of districts of Haryana, Western UP, in the north were chosen because they had the right soil and temperature conditions also were irrigated. In down south, there were districts of Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu which were chosen, and therefore what it did was it created pockets of agricultural development. So you started looking at saying, oh, Punjab has produced so much of food grains, or Haryana has produced so much of food grains, or Western UP is the grain basket, and down south it was Tamil Nadu and AP. This was a result of concerted efforts in those districts by the government. Also, the idea was that the effect and the impact will trickle down to the entire country. To a very large extent, that has happened. Unfortunately, there are areas, because of socio-political reasons, which got left behind in the race. We all know that parts of Eastern UP, Bihar, MP, they just got left out, Odisha, in this race, and therefore did not produce or did not yield the same kind of results that were expected out of such trickle down impact that would have happened. So where were we? What we started with, as I said, was we were producing about 50 odd million tons in 50-51. But post this green revolution, we almost doubled this. So 66 to 70. And if you actually take 50 to 70, we actually doubled our production in 10 years or 20 years, 2 decades. But no, it was actually only 5 or 6 years that the large changes came in. Between 70 and 2000, we again doubled it. And between 2000 and 2017, we are almost, about 50% higher is what we have. The latest ones close to about 319-20 quick estimates would leave us very close to that 50 to 65 percent increase. But what also happened is that within the same period, if you actually look at the employment in this sector, why is agriculture very important to the India is that it is not only from a point of view of food security or trying to produce enough food for these are teeming millions, our ever growing population, but it is also that when we started, we were more than 2/3 of our population was involved in agriculture. The latest estimates say that it is still around 55%. So if your 55% of your population is involved with agriculture, I mean, how do you keep such a large population being productively employed in some sector is another big concern, which makes it extremely important. Now, from an economy perspective, our change in the employment numbers is a welcome change, because you are actually moving from, let us say, the basic activities to a higher order of manufacturing and service sector growing. And with the growth of service sector, those are the signs of a growing economy. But because we have this problem that still a large amount of population is involved in agriculture, this continues to be a very important sector for us, in spite of its lower contribution to the GDP with each passing year. What it also did was that the disposable incomes in the hands of households, in the hands of common people, increased, and they have been continuously increasing. So one of the McKinsey reports, for example, predicts that there will be an overall increase between 85 to 2015-20 would be close to about 6%. Our urban will be close to about 5.8%, which is 6%, and rural will grow at about 3.6%. Now, why this is important is, and that is what I will connect in the next slide, is that this has fueled the demand for food, which has to ease the supply side constraints. So even when we are producing, in terms of record numbers, both in food grains, in fruits and vegetables, still the supply side constraints have to be eased out. And in fact, that would answer a lot of your questions regarding saying how the price of these commodities becomes such a important element. If we are producing so high, why can't we sell it at a lower level? And that is where the supply side constraints play a major role. So while all this food security and our doubling of productions were happening, the income of these households were rising. Now, not all this income was rising because of agriculture. It was rising because of diversification in the family itself. Not many farmers were continuing to do only farming, or their next generation was not continuing to do only farming. So they were getting into cities or urban areas, or large parts of Punjab were migrating to Europe and Canada at that point in time, or even US and Australia. So the whole this thing was that the economy, in the rural economy there, was actually being fueled by this non-farming activities also. And while the farming activities were contributing income to the household, but in effect, a large portion of these household incomes was also coming from non-farm activities. What this has led to, and as I said, you might find that the presentation is not into a smooth flow. That is because you have to cover so much in a short space of time. But I am going to be that link, trying to provide you that link of why we are changing from one to the other topic so fast. All this, while all these changes were happening and the production was growing and the incomes were growing, what it has led to is a change in the dietary habits of common Indians. And what is this change? People have moved away from, cereals and coarse cereals to, finer cereals, having lots of fruits and vegetable in their diets, having a lot of, so it is essentially a protein-rich diet that they are, going towards. The last row in my table actually shows you that, which is, meat, fish, and eggs. So it is not that a very large population has suddenly started consuming meat, fish, and eggs. A very large population is finding that meat, fish, and eggs is available to them for consumption now much easily at an reasonably, or I would say, a real affordable price, which was not the case hitherto. But if you actually look at areas like pulses, vegetable and fruits, the growth has almost been similar. What has actually shrunk is the cereals. So it is not that we have stopped eating wheat and rice. The problem is that the consumption of wheat and rice, even in our diets, is actually coming down. I mean, people are moving from, most of you would be aware, particularly the younger lot, and who are very health conscious today, the keto diets, the no carbs and stuff like that is all, I'm not saying that's a universal trend, but those are the kind of things that have started and will become, let us say, a trend in as we, move another decade or so. So all this is contributing to less of cereal consumption and more of fruits and vegetable, edible oil, sugar, etc. Meat, fish, and eggs. Again, I'm saying these are signs of maturing economy and decreasing poverty. A trend that in all respects has to continue. I mean, one can keep on, we can keep on debating, till the cows come home, saying that, boss, are we killing our, food grain producers? If there is no consumption or if there is less of consumption that is going to happen, how it is going to impact us and so on and so forth, or how it is going to impact them and their incomes. But the idea here is that in growing economies, that is what has happened. That those are, those are the areas where, let us say, where the impact has been maximum, and therefore there is a need to diversify that kind of agriculture, move away from, pure wheat rice cycle. Most of you who understand agriculture would be familiar with Rabi Kharif cycle, and unless until you move out from that and diversify into other areas. So today, most of us grew up thinking that the granaries are Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, probably Tamil Nadu, and rice bowls of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. Now, partly these statements are true, but they hide more than they, or they, they reveal more than they hide. The idea is that Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, yes, they are the granaries for the country today, not because that they produce more. It is because in Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, rice consumption, paddy consumption is very low. So they are the ones who contribute to the national kitty. They are the ones who are able to put that into the national pool. Whereas down south, if you go, and even Bihar and Eastern UP and West Bengal, the paddy that they produce is self-consumed and even more needs to, be, let us say, imported from other states, if I could use the term imported. So they are producing, but they are not, contributing to the national kitty. And that is the scenario with most of the states. For example, MP today is a wheat surplus state. Not only is it a wheat surplus state, it is one of the states which are actually where the quality of wheat that we produce is far better than what we are producing in the northern states. I don't know how many of you would be aware that Sharbati is considered as one of the best varieties of wheat. And it's an indigenous Desi variety of wheat. And, you often, you are sold कि शरबती गेहूं का आटा है जी. Why शरबती गेहूं का आटा है? शरबती गेहूं का आटा इसलिए है, if you actually, kind of delve a little deeper, कि gluten content is lower there. Now, gluten content is something which is not a very good, ingredient to have in your chapati or, any of the wheat-related cereals that you will have. Similarly, today, the need to grow a particular kind of wheat called durum wheat is very high, because that is the one that is used for used in preparation of pasta. You don't get the same consistency in if you actually make pasta out of non-durum wheat and so on. So these are the finest finer points of where we are growing, what we are growing, and why we are growing. And because of these changing dietary habits, those changes have to be filled. So you today see that the fruits and vegetables are growing. Just to put things in perspective, and I made this graph just to look for everyone to kind of absorb it. If you actually see between 1617 and 2021, it is vegetables which are leading the surge. The fruits and vegetables, have become regular at on the dining table today. A thing which even when I was growing up was not very common. I mean, हम लोग इतने फ्रूट वूट कंजम्पशन के लिए नहीं होते थे. ओनली सीजनल फ्रूट होते थे. वो भी सीजन में 2-4-5 बारी मिल जाते थे तो यू वर लकी एनफ. अगर नहीं मिलते थे तो कोई बात नहीं. तो मतलब फ्रूट तो काफी कम होता था, एटलीस्ट मेरी डाइट में. बट over the past 5 or 6 years, fruit and vegetable production has overtaken the food grain production. That this brings me to a very, very interesting question. Are fruits and vegetables covered under MSP? Why are they growing then? Because over the last couple of months, that is all that I have been hearing. MSP नहीं होगा तो मतलब गेहूं और चावल जो है इस कंट्री में मिलना बंद हो जाएगा. But cereals are covered under MSP. Why are they shrinking? So these are the kind of questions and these are the kind of areas that we need to actually look at while when we talk about this thing. And I certainly feel that as geographers, because we understand let us say, the geographical lay of the land, we need to ask these questions and we need to actually put them into the right perspective. So therefore, I thought, what are those critical factors in agriculture? What are the opportunities that we have? We have diverse climate, which enables us to produce a wide range of crops. So you have, let us say, the fruit baskets in the upper north, Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal, Uttarakhand, etc. Large variety of fruits, particularly the apples, and I don't know what is that family. I'm forgetting the name. What is that family of fruits called? But then you have the grape and the citrus in Maharashtra, Gujarat, this thing. Suddenly, Gujarat has become, come out and become the banana capital. I mean, it is one of the states that produces the highest amount of banana, or second highest, or whatever, in the country today. Of course, there are opportunities in fruits, vegetables, pulses. We are the largest producers of cotton, sugarcane, peanuts, etc. And there is this, of course, spices is something that is associated with our name. And what it also tends to do for us is that it produces round the year cropping cycles, because we have a large consuming population within ourselves. Almost 90% of commodities that we produced are consumed domestically. So when people talk about the market nahi hai, it is a bit surprising, for us. We don't export much. Just to give you an example here, moment India gets into the global wheat and paddy market, the prices drop. That is, if we want to import wheat and rice, the international market prices drop. International market prices increase. Moment we want to export it, the international prices drop. Because we have such huge quantities that we are producing almost equivalent to smaller European nations, and the farms are being supported by governments there with the first point that I raised, because they also want to keep the a large percentage of their population engaged with agriculture, and that is one of the reasons why they are, they subsidize the agriculture so much, and the cost of production, etc., indices are in their, benefit. But at the same time, in spite of having all this, what are the things that we find are challenges in India? We are still plagued by this called fragmented land holdings. Now, there are two parts to this fragmented land holdings. I think last statistics, if I may quote, is that about 72% of land holdings in India are less than 1 hectare. And if we actually look at it in terms of how this has happened, it is essentially to do with, I think, that a family started with, let us say, a piece of land, and then kids and their kids and their kids have actually reduced your land parcel size to less than probably even an acre at places. So that is a problem. Now, with an acre, you cannot, you cannot produce or you cannot have economies of scale that you would have when you have large tracts of land. Just excuse me for a minute, please. I'll just have a glass of water. I forgot. Sorry. So I was talking about the fragmented landholding structures in India, and this is something which is not economically viable in the long run. But let me also give you a counter argument when people quote a lot of this as data. So yes, 72% or 70% or whatever that figure is, the land holdings are less than 1 hectare. But what does it translate onto ground? Suppose Deepak and I are two brothers, and we each got, let us say, an acre of land. Now, technically, we both in government records are owners of an, two parcels of land which are 1 acre each. But either I am, because I know that, if we continue to farm an acre each, this is not going to, kind of help us out. So in the longer run or in the process, what happens is that one of us, suppose Deepak is working in the city. In a great scenario, I work on the land and I work on a consolidated piece of 2 acres because Deepak has already, he has not given the land to me, but he has said that he will not live off land and therefore he will give it to me for a whatever little pre-negotiated price that happens in a typical Indian family system. That happens. So suppose my total income is, 10 lakhs from that piece of land in a year. So probably Deepak will not take 5 lakhs because obviously there is an expense of cost of cultivation is there and so on and so forth. So he would say probably, okay, give me 2 lakhs, whatever, if that comes to be, that number comes to be 2 lakhs. So those are the kind of informal consolidation that is already happening in India. And therefore, if you actually go down to the rural level, there are very few actually farmers who are cultivating an acre or less of parcels of land. So this whole concept of marginal farmer बहुत दुखी है बहुत दुखी है because उसको he cannot bring the economies of scale, cannot bring the technology, cannot bring mechanization, है वो दुखी. But वो मतलब that is automatically going to reduce, because all these challenges to him even will force the consolidation of land, and therefore a larger parcels will become more economically viable, not only to produce and but to even operate machines and so on and so forth. There has been a high monsoon dependence with irrigation, which is skewed to particular states. So if you actually see the irrigated area map of the country, you will see that some states irrigation is as high as 70-80%, and a few other states, and I'm not talking about Rajasthan and Ladakh and difficult parts of Uttarakhand and Himachal. I'm generally talking about even the the prime states in the middle, places like Madhya Pradesh, etc., where you still would have about 50%, less than 50% of the total land under cultivation as irrigated. So there is a certain skew. Some part of it has been kind of improved with the creation of infrastructure of dams and waterways, etc. And that is something which has to go on as we move forward. There is a third element. Government priorities change from time to time. A theme that I was discussing on the first initial few slides. Because we wanted food security at that time, the government gave large incentives to food grain production. So you had MSP, you had credit facility, you had high yielding varieties. Most of your agri research was on food grains at that point in time. And therefore, what resulted, the resultant was that not only were these incentives given, but on the most fertile tracts of land, we put those under food grains, which is to say that yes, food grains, particularly wheat and rice, require a certain fertility level where they can be grown. They cannot be grown in, let us say, ravines of Chambal or probably, parts of the desert area and so on and so forth. So the government priorities changed from, let us say, food security at that point in time, which encouraged the production of food grains, to then sugar became a major commodity for the government to handle. So while geographically, if you see, regions of Western UP, Haryana, Eastern Bihar, etc., are naturally suited to cane cultivation, but then we increase the areas in the already so-called drier states of Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh. And this did not happen, overnight. This was a concerted effort where you made the MSP so lucrative. I'll give you, lack of time, otherwise I would have loved to show you those graphs. If you actually see sugarcane production graphs, you have cycles of 3 years or 4 years. So एक ईयर जो है प्रोडक्शन कम होता है, दूसरे ईयर में, बिकॉज जिस ईयर प्रोडक्शन कम होता है, शुगर प्राइसेस हार्डन. नेक्स्ट ईयर एवरीबडी थिंक्स कि बॉस शुगर प्राइसेस विल रिमेन हार्ड. हाँ, तो वो एवरीबडी पुट्स ऑन शुगर केन. हाँ, एंड फिर वो थर्ड ईयर में या फोर्थ ईयर में, बिकॉज इट्स 12 to 18 month क्रॉप, वो थर्ड या फोर्थ ईयर में जाके वो फिर से कम हो जाता है, बिकॉज फार्मर्स डू नॉट गेट द राइट प्राइस or are unable to get the right price even after a dedicated MSP being put into place. The reason today you must look at or you must be hearing, हमको ना जी गन्ने का दाम नहीं मिला. अरे कहाँ से मिलेगा आपको? In Western UP, Haryana, Eastern Bihar, etc., where the sugar mills are, those are mills which were started in the 50s. Their technology is that of 50s. When you compare to the yields of in sugarcane, most of you would be aware, the conversion factor is matlab, you get let us say if you put 100 kgs of cane through the processor, 10% is your conversion factor. तो आपको 10 किलो चीनी निकलती है उसमें से. So the conversion factor in the northern part of the country is hardly about 8 to 9%. And when you compare it to places like Maharashtra, AP, even Tamil Nadu, where the conversion factors are in excess of 11, 12, 13, 14%, obviously those are the sugar mills which are reaping the benefits. उधर में तो आपने कभी नहीं सुना कि सरकार ने बोला हम गन्ने का दाम दिलवाएंगे. But what are the problems there? The problems there is Maharashtra, you always constantly keep on hearing suicide rate. विदर्भा में किसान मर गए, वो सुसाइड कमिट कर लिया. भैया sugar cane, such a cost incentive, sorry, cost, it's a where you put in a lot of cost to produce sugarcane. That is not something, but you have made the MSP such a lucrative and an attractive proposition that farmer at the end of the day, he is also like a common person like you and me, no, wants to enhance his income, wants to earn more. So therefore you become into that, you get into that vicious circle. आप लगाते हो, आपको उतना पैसा नहीं मिलता है. Just to give you an example of why, what has this change done geographically. So in Western UP, the crop is about 12 to 14 months. It takes about 17 to 18 waterings in that year. Water for you, just for you to understand, waterings in sugarcane are extremely important. अगर आपने उसको पानी नहीं दिया तो वो बिल्कुल सूख जाता है एंड योर शुगर कंटेंट जो है वो कम हो जाता है. मतलब रस नहीं होगा, और जो रस होगा उसमें सुक्रोज, द मीठा का कंटेंट इज दैट मच लेसर. देयरफॉर वाटर टाइमली देना बड़ा जरूरी होता है इसमें. सो इन वेस्टर्न यूपी, हरियाणा, ईस्टर्न बिहार एक्सेट्रा, यू कैन हैव अ क्रॉप विच इज 12 to 14 months, and you give them, you have to give about 17 to 18 to 20 waterings, and it does well. In Maharashtra, particularly in Maharashtra, एक तो वैसे ही वहां पानी कम है, और ऊपर से आपको you are at least giving it between 28 to 30 waterings per crop, which is 14 to 16 month crop. So apart from the fact that you are getting 2 additional months of crop there, there is no other, the number of waterings outweigh the benefits of growing crop there. But हमने किया, वहाँ socio-political reasons भी थे. वहाँ महाराष्ट्र में the sugar cooperative is a lobby that I don't want to lecture anyone on. Each one of you know. Very strong political, willpower there, and therefore they have been able to keep their sugar mills one of the most modernized and best in the world. Whereas in this part of UP and Bihar, nahi hua hai utna. They are old. They have been, they were not in the cooperative frame. They were still taken into, by old, I mean, I don't want to use that term, but for lack of explanation, and between our group, old Lala company type लोग उसको चला रहे हैं. तो मतलब वो तो मैं तो जितना मतलब, the idea is कि I want to extract whatever I can as the time goes. So these were some of the areas that the government priorities change from time to time. Abhi there is this pulses लगाएंगे. Pulses by their very definition, and most of you would be aware as students of this subject, are to be grown in marginal and submarginal lands. They are not supposed to be grown in the most fertile of lands. They are not. They don't require fertility. बिकॉज वो नाइट्रोजनस है, वो तो खुद ही सॉइल को और फर्टाइल कर देते हैं. So, you typically grow pulses in the not so marginal and submarginal lands of Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, parts of UP, the bordering Madhya Pradesh wala belt and all that. आप वहां ग्रो करते थे. Those were the traditional hubs of growing pulses. रायलसीमा, आंध्र प्रदेश में, and plateau region, Deccan Plateau, वो वहां मुश्किल था. तो there it was actually the lands for pulses were there. But today you see even farmers in Haryana and parts of Punjab also wanting to grow pulses, which is fine, absolutely fine, because after all they are also human beings, and they will also like to enhance their incomes. But what is the climatological and environmental degradation that happens? Then don't start talking about कि पंजाब में पैन्स बन गए, सॉल्ट पैन्स बन गए, एंड हरियाणा में सॉल्ट पैन बन गए, एंड so much land is going waste because each year we spoil so much land, so on and so forth. And I think as geographers we need to be extremely sensitive to these things and provide the the next level of perspective. One of the biggest challenge that Indian agriculture has also faced is that even after Green Revolution, our yields per unit of land, this is per hectare actually, have remained lower as compared to the international standards. Some of it even lower than our very good old neighbor Pakistan. We don't like to talk about that too much, but yes, even Pakistan has better yields than us. So this is a function of how mechanized your agriculture is, how well your agricultural extension programs are working, how well your farmers are able to imbibe and take up the new technology. And today that is a problem, and it continues to exert that additional pressure on the food distribution and therefore supplies. The whole problem is that of credit linkages. We don't have a formal credit system. It is very easy to say कि वो फार्मर को वो दे दिया है हमने, what's that called, किसान क्रेडिट कार्ड. So in fact the last count of किसान credit card numbers अभी मेरे को याद नहीं है, but I don't remember the exact numbers, but it is more than the farming households in this country. So you can imagine कि यहाँ ये भी होगा कि the Aadhaar numbers will be more than the total population of this country, क्योंकि हर एक आदमी दो आधार भी बना लेगा थोड़े दिन बाद. So because it promises you a reasonably good credit linkages, so in the immediate, that was thought to be a government's program by which they would be able to bridge this gap, but that did not happen. And so what typically happens is at the time of land preparation or sowing, that is when the farmer needs the money. Every time he can't keep his land as as mortgage against a loan that he wishes to take. कितनी जगह रखेगा? वो ट्रैक्टर भी उसी से लिया है, घर बनाने के लिए कुछ पैसे भी उसी से लिए हैं, घर में कुछ शादी वादी की है वो भी उसी के नाम पे, कितनी जगह रखेगा वो सेम पार्सल ऑफ लैंड. So therefore this was a step by the government taken to enhance the credit availability, but फिर भी नहीं हो पाता है. And therefore what typically happens in this scenario is that you actually end up going to the village, I don't want to give a name to that but there are various professions that they go to. Artiya is one of them, Baniya is one of them, मतलब जो money lender होता है. large farmer is also one of them. So all these sharks are there. So wo at that point in time they help the farmer with a promise that the harvest will only be sold to them. So that is where you end up in a vicious circle. And that is what seems like, when you are breaking when the government is trying to today break the APMC laws and, put up change the market availability and condition, that is what is being questioned, or that is what is being, lots of people seem to be up in arms against that, because this has been an established practice for some times to come. Last part of the presentation, I know I have taken a little more time than what I had budgeted for, but nonetheless, so having told you all this story, a natural question is, what do we do here? So the first thing is we need to increase productivity. And how can we increase productivity is we need to put in investments. Investments will not only be capital, not only be knowledge, but technology. And technology at some point in time is going to cost money. So it is, see, tractor is just a prime mover. So when we talk about farm mechanization, we say, no, there is so many of tractors available. But tractor is a useless piece of mechanization unless and until it can pull something behind which can actually do the work. So आपको प्लो भी चाहिए. अब सिर्फ प्लो से तो काम हो नहीं रहा है. तो most of you who would have come from village backgrounds and come from areas who understand a bit of agriculture, अभी सिर्फ प्लोस तो चलता ही नहीं है, बहुत कम जगह चलता है और बहुत कम क्रॉप्स में चलता है. सो यू नीड रोटावेटर्स, यू नीड सीडर्स, you need weeders, and then at the end you need combined harvesters. Why each of this why is it being required today? Because I briefly will touch upon it, because the farm labor has also decreased with time, because farm labor was not not becoming a lucrative enough proposition for people, so people moved out. And NREGS, whether we like it or not, has helped this movement of farm labor from surplus areas where they used to go to the scarce areas. So typically Bihar, Eastern UP, populations migrating to Punjab for helping the large agricultural families there. Today that is not the scenario, because usko ghar mein बैठे बैठे जब आपको whatever the minimum wage is 200 कुछ या whatever जो मिल रहा है उसको वहां मिल रहा है. So why will he go to a different place even at the lure of 25-30% earning more? I'm good sitting at my home. So once your labor has reduced, you need to mechanize. There is no other ways. The barriers will still remain. There is no point thinking that Deepak and I as brothers will one day decide in the larger interest of the country कि दीपक चल यार तू एक नाम पे हम जमीन कर देते हैं. नहीं होगा वो. हमारे भी बच्चे होंगे, वो भी डिवाइड करेंगे आपस में, so that 1 acre of Deepak will get divided by at least 5 times. My 1 acre, because I am a good citizen, will only get divided by 1. So the point that I am trying to make is that it will keep on continue to get fragmented. You have to release market access. You have to come down with APMC. And you cannot have examples saying कि वो बिहार में APMC नहीं था, वहां तो farmer income इतनी है versus where there is APMC you have a higher farmer income. That is one-sided view of looking at data. Look at what Bihar is producing today. Most of you will be surprised to know that Pepsi, which started operations in Punjab by growing potatoes for their wafer units, today West Bengal is the biggest contributor to them. Why have they moved to West Bengal? A, certainly there is quality issues. B, the major element that has come this thing is that beyond a certain point, the Punjab farmer was not willing to listen to them. So if you have entered a contract, then you pretty well, respect it. We all do, no? If whenever we are working and we are working on a contract with any company, even if it is a permanent employment, at the end of the day, it is contract. Ma'am, Anshu ma'am has to put in, whatever some hours of weekly work, whether she likes it or she doesn't. Same is with Kaushal sir. So those are the kind of respect that. So why should farmers be left? Those are the kind of questions that we need to ask and answer. In sum, the challenges of enhancing productivity is going to remain, and so is going to be the problem of credit supply. I am not looking at irrigation and harvest management, so much, because I think that is a place, particularly post-harvest management. That is an area which the private sector will anyway come in and kind of capture that. Whether we like it or we don't, we keep on abusing them, saying we are producing. For example, just take the example of what is wrong with ITC. All of us eat Ashirwad Atta. What is wrong if ITC is procuring that from Madhya Pradesh farmers? Nothing wrong there. All it is doing is to channelize a system of procurement and supply, except that we have to ensure that the prices that they are paying to the farmer is nowhere lower than the, let us say, I don't want to use the term market price or the MSP, because वो farm gate से उठाता है, खेत से उठाता है वो. So there is no cost of transportation or of bagging that the farmer is paying any which ways. So अगर उसको 2 रुपए, and he is a very intelligent guy, अगर वो उसको 1 रुपया सस्ता भी मिल रहा है, तो he calculates कि this would have been my cost of transportation and taking it to mandi, then my horse spending 8 hours trying to find the right RTR, and then RTR coming in and saying कि अभी करते हैं, whole day getting bloody damn wasted. इससे अच्छा है कि मेरे को यहाँ बैठे बैठे 2 रुपए कम मिल ले, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. So I think that is an area that private sector will take, and it is taking up. The option is to get exactly a second green revolution, and which will not happen this time purely on the back of technology. It will happen on, once we are able to channelize capital to the farm, and we do agricultural marketing reforms. And I think that those are the first few steps that the government of the day has taken. Most of us, we may not like it, or we may, back it. But the truth is that is the only way to, the government does not have money here. It is as simple as that. So somebody has to fill in that void, and private sector will fill that void. And it has to do it in spite of, all the barriers that are there. So that's where I would like to end. I'm sure most of you would have, taken a small snooze also while I was speaking.
No, I don't think so. It was, a very illuminating session. They were not able to, don't think anybody was able to take, a break. And Acha, by the way, before we get into these question answer sessions, you were saying that on 1 acre parcel of land, the after expenses and all, the net income is going to be about 2 lakhs, right?
No. I was just giving a simple
Acha,
mathematical
acha.
example. It is
Okay,
not.
okay.
I know.
Realistically, how
It's
much does it work out to? I was just curious to know that.
1 acre in a typical Rabi Kharif cycle would work out to be about 40,000-45,000.
Only.
Yeah.
So per year it will be about 1 lakh.
Yes.
Are you talking about both included, right?
No. 1 lakh. I mean, 2 seasons, I'm assuming.
Acha, okay. So now, since you have my other acre, and I am in Dubai for the last 25 years, तो 25 लाख तो payment कर देना भैया आप.
आ जाओ ले लो आप.
Okay, friends, the floor is open for questions. If you have any questions, please start asking one by one.
Deepak, can I say something?
Sure, ma'am. Why not?
Yeah, a very interesting session, Rahul, and really grateful that you've taken out time and sharing your views with these geographers. And of course, we'll try to ensure that the young students who are doing geography and really not alumni yet, they are also going to benefit from these lectures. We have the recording, and I'm going to share it with them.
Thanks.
Having said that, yeah, Rahul, thanks. Having said that, there is one thing that we have to bring the markets to the to the forefront and stuff. But the real, I think, challenge that agriculture is facing today is one that, as you said, that labor is decreasing. They are going to working in um, uh, going for work in urban areas and leaving behind their lands. And in most cases, you would find that there is litigations. A lot of litigations are now taking place. I mean, of course, they have always been there, but slowly and gradually that is increasing because the father has grown older, the sons are not interested in tilling the land, they have moved over to the city. So how do you think that this situation should be tackled, because it's going on in a big way? uh, so what is your opinion about how to tackle this, and do you think privatizing could be the only solution?
So, ma'am, I would like to answer that in 2 parts. One is, yes, what you are actually suggesting is happening in a big way. Younger crowd is no more interested in farming. It is not considered glamorous enough to be a farmer anymore, as it used to be a few years back or a couple of decades back. So yes, people are moving out, and that is a cause for concern. But at the same time, what is also happening because of that is that there are opportunities of consolidation of land that is happening. So while the land will still remain there, it's an asset that is immovable. And even if I have moved out, if somebody can ensure that I keep on earning something out of it, so I will probably give that on rent, or give that to my relatives for them to plow, and so on and so forth. So that is something which will in effect lead to consolidation of land. That is one part. The other part is, ma'am, what is happening is women folk who are left behind in the village are the ones who should actually become as landowners. Today, the problem is because of our systems, we cannot transfer land to the women in the house. हेरिडिटरी नहीं है, ये नहीं है, वो नहीं है. उससे क्या हो रहा है कि शी डज नॉट हैव एक्सेस टू कैपिटल. So, for example, in my stint in Mahindra, one of the key areas or key changes that we brought in, and once we, actually looked at this, was that the tractor design was changed for women to be able to use the tractor even wearing a sari. And the biggest design change that happened, which most of you can notice now, is tractors used to come as central gear shift. गियर बीच में होता था मैम, तो साड़ी अटक जाती थी, आप बैठ ही नहीं सकते उसके ऊपर साड़ी के साथ और गियर चेंज करते रहोगे आप, वो साइड शिफ्ट कर दिया. फिर you made those hydraulic ergonomics so easy to use that there was no physical power that is now required to operate a tractor. You brought it with a power steering, and you did the works with them. The problem is the credit system does not recognize. So suppose my wife is in the village and I work in urban areas. Either I have to produce all the papers of land to be able to get a tractor, or she even if she knows how to use a tractor, she is unable to drive it. So there are two structural shifts that have to happen. One is this consolidation of land has to be recognized, and I don't know what is the legal framework that stops this thing, but I am told that it is a problem, particularly with things like land consolidation act and all that. Nobody can have more than whatever, some 10 acres or 5 acres or something like that. So it has to remain divided on paper at least. So those kinds of structural shifts have to take place in the economy to enable a renewed this thing in agriculture to come in.
Thanks so much, Rahul. I think others can ask some questions.
Yeah, sure. I think Praful has got a question. Praful, go ahead.
So there are two parts. One is the smaller explanation part from the changing dietary habits. The graph that you showed, the table that you showed, it has GDP as mentioned 7 and 8%. Just a clarification needed. What was that? It was an expected GDP. The graph showed 7% and 8% for same year. So one is just the explanation part, and the second is a larger question. Is the like your presentation dealt with the domestic aspect of the agriculture, and you touched upon the exports part. But how can, when we look at agriculture from an international perspective, international trade, that part, just a brief on that also, sir.
So yes, the this McKinsey report was done in, I think, some 2008 or 9. Therefore, they have taken the GDP actually till 2005, and they have projected it till 2020 at that point in time. So that is the explanation for the two GDP figures that you see. The second question that you had was on the international trade of agri-commodities. The agri-commodities are divided into two clear parts. So one is the staples, which is your cereals and all your food grains, blah blah blah. Usme we are incompetent to do it. उसका रीजन है कि our cost of production is far higher. I mean, I don't want to delve. It is a subject on its own. I don't want to delve into too long into it. But essentially, because of subsidies in Europe and US, their cost of production is very low as compared to cost of production per unit in India. Therefore, our output cost is also higher. भाई जब आप इनपुट ही ज्यादा लगा रहे हो तो आपकी आउटपुट भी तो ज्यादा होगी ना. And therefore we are competitive there. We are not competitive as far as this part is concerned. The opportunity therefore lies in the fruit and vegetable sector, where we are doing a great job of it. The problem is that some of our crops. So let me tell you, India is one of the largest exporters of wine grade grapes in the world. So most of the wines that you taste these days, somewhere it is like, वो नहीं है आजकल की सेरम इंस्टीट्यूट की, ऐसा कोई एडल्ट नहीं है जिसको सेरम इंस्टीट्यूट की वैक्सीन ना लगी हो दुनिया में. हाँ, तो इट इज लाइक कि ऐसे बहुत कम वाइन्स हैं जिनमें इंडियन ग्रेप लगाना हो. लेकिन the problems are twofold there. One is for us to stay within the international quality norms, which is that ये आपका इंसेक्टिसाइड पेस्टिसाइड रेजिड्यू कम होना चाहिए. There are ratings for that and so on and so forth. We have to be very watchful of those things. And there are quality measures that are being put in place. Again, the problem there is that a common, normal farmer cannot do that. So it has to, in some way, get corporatized, because he will bring in that capital to ensure. Then वो temperature should be checked. आप कितने temperature पे उसको transport करोगे, and so on and so forth. तो वो अकेला farmer कर ही नहीं सकता. So, but that is, let us say, for grapes and such crops. For things like apple and all, we have to start looking right at the grassroots, where we have to actually look at, saying ki what makes it, the apple more crunchier. And we don't produce enough of those crunchier apples. That's why Washington apples at our local fruit vendors are so commonly sold here in this country. So each fruit and vegetable, where there is an opportunity, needs to come up with the best quality measures to be met and stuff like that. And I think both the government and the private sector have to come together to actually pool their resources and see that this happens.
Right. Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Very interesting, Rahul. Anyone else? I think Abhinav wanted to ask a question. Abhinav, are you there?
Yes, sir. Hello, Rahul, sir. Hello,
Hi.
Anshu. Hello, Deepak, sir.
Hi.
Sir, I'm a student of 1998-2001. So, very insightful thoughts. It was quite learning. Sir, in given relevant this present day scenario, where this thing reforms are being introduced into farming sector, isn't it as if we are only considering the economic perspective without by ignoring the social or demographic spread, uniform spread of capital that would be generated from it? And attached to that, do we have any such successful models abroad where people sitting at the bottom of paradigm have been beneficiated by such reforms?
So, two things, Abhinav. Most of the foreign countries did not ever control the market. So, for example, US guarantee करता है कि मैं सब कॉर्न खरीदूंगा आपका, आप जितना लगाओगे. Now, US can do that. Do you think we as an economy, as a state of this country, are in a position to say that? Or should we be saying that at all? I mean, socialistically सुनने में बहुत अच्छा लगेगा ये, बट फिर भी हम गारंटी करते हैं ना. आप फार्मर फेयर एवरेज क्वालिटी जैसा लेके आएगा, फूड कॉर्पोरेशन ऑफ इंडिया उसको खरीदेगा. आज की डेट में 20 रुपए या 18 रुपए किलो, whatever is the new MSP of wheat, we are buying, and we are still supplying in our PDS system at 1/4 the rate. Foreign countries do not have such problems. So number one is that. Number two is, yes, there is a socio-demographic angle to this thing, and one has to find via medias of changing that. So yes, the government has to come out with an alternative plan of action of saying that because I will, it is like when a dam gets built, a lot of people have to be shifted from their households. The government has to come up with a plan of something of that nature, that fine, I am going to, not allow you to have this, but then, I will also provide you opportunities of, in the similar space somewhere. Either it is factory employment, किसी food factory में employment, या किसी उसमें something which can hold your household together. Now that is something which is missing as of now. There were efforts made. There were things like I don't know if you are aware, there was this plan by the erstwhile President Abdul Kalam, where he said that if each corporate could, embrace about, 5 or 10 villages in a cluster, and, therefore bring in that development. We have our own problems of red tapeism. ऐसा नहीं है कि लोग करना नहीं चाहते या लोग आगे नहीं आए. Believe me, I did that as part of Mahindra, and I got defeated by the system, and therefore Mahindra got defeated, and we stood aside, because you have to. It is very difficult to explain to bureaucracy at times, which comes with an attitude of saying ki a capitalist will only sucker out the capital out of here and not leave anything with the. I think those thought systems also have to undergo a change. And I think that is where I was referring to when I started this conversation, that those changes have to be made at the, at the syllabi, at the, हम लोग बड़ा ये पढ़ लेते हैं कि बॉस देखो ये, within agriculture geography, these are the 5 agriculture, these are the 21 agroclimatic zones. To what effect, yaar? What effect? What are we talking about when we are saying कि you can grow sugarcane in Maharashtra? ये तो agroclimatic zone में तो हमें ये नहीं पढ़ाया गया था. अरहर दाल आप मध्य प्रदेश और राजस्थान वगैरह गुजरात में लगा सकते थे, but today अरहर दाल is grown all over the country. Now, so I'm saying that if it starts at that level, that is where the mindset will change. And I think it is a long, painful path, but somewhere we will have to take that. Yeah, please.
Thank you. But sir, can't there be any midway? Because as if I'm into a business, and for every business model, wealth has to go upwards. It has to accumulate in one direction after a certain period of investment. One. Second, for every constitution, given our constitution or laws, whichever we gone us, there have been safeguards. There have been laws to control human behavior, to control, safeguard someone. As if I'm into HR industry, there are laws like minimum wages, so that one cannot exploit these things. So, isn't it we are going in a way where certain safeguards are being removed without introducing other kind of safeguards?
Yes. And that is where I said that intervention of the government is required in those areas. And, it has to be put in place. My only thing is कि it will always remain Abhinav a chicken and an egg situation कि कौन पहले आया था. पहले आप safeguard लगाओगे या पहले आप development, मतलब किसी तरीके से you will get into the development mode. Nobody wants to, जिसको बोलते हैं ना bell the cat types, कौन पहले करेगा.
Okay, so that is it, or do we have any other question?
Deepak, I wanted to just share one information. Like Rahul said about adopting villages. So I just wanted to share with you all that our college has also got a project under Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. It is a project, and under that we have adopted 5 villages in Bulandshahr.
Great.
So, so this is it's something. I mean, I won't say that we are doing a great job, but we do
It's a
visit
beginning.
those villages. Yeah, it's a beginning. It's a beginning.
Yes.
And of course, the government of India by itself has these. I don't know. There was some scheme in which they are. Each state has to, see to the development of the villages in totality. But those schemes in some places where it's the government at the state is different from that at the center. I mean, all those political gimmicks are there, and
Are there? Yeah.
no, the schemes are not taking off. So those issues are there, and if we could do, each one of us, and lot of our students and lot of us are from, have a background from our villages. So if we are able to do and contribute within that, and make an effort, I'm sure that face of India would be very different from what it is today. And some of the students during the the pandemic, they were in the villages only, and if you ask them and talk to them today, they're really quite happy out there and are not so keen to come back to the cities.
Yeah.
And in fact, if we can have this kind of reverse pattern in which the students learn here and
go back.
study in the cities and take this knowledge and technology back to the villages, we would do a pretty good job of the overall development, and all these things can be well taken care of. So
Sure.
these are just some of my observations, Rahul, and thanks a lot for being here on this platform and sharing
Thank you.
your. And you really gave really good thoughts about how Mahindra has tried to accommodate the women in their designing the machinery in such a way. And so these are some things we really need to do and take the country forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Deepak.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Anshu.
Deepak.
Now we have more questions. Abhi, kahan se? Thank you. We have got Smriti Singh. She has got a question for you. Over to you, Sam.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Am I
Hi. Smriti.
audible? Yeah, hi. Hi, Rahul.
Hi.
I joined in late, but I wanted to understand that when we talk about all the reforms in the agri sector, in true sense, in the rural area, how many households are dependent solely on the agricultural income only? With my experience, I've seen that there is one generation of tillers or agri people, but the subsequent generations have moved out of this particular profession or their dependence on the agriculture. And they have, especially in Punjab, I've seen, in Haryana, I've seen, and yet they don't record, since that there is no way to record their source of income. On the books, they are shown as the agri dependent families only. So that's the question I have at this moment.
Rahul, your mic is muted.
I was saying, Smriti, so you are right. That is a problem that we have as census definition of the household, and therefore census definition of the way work is done. Fortunately, unfortunately, that is the only exercise that gives us all this data. And, there is no way, no other way to actually, kind of find out actually how many households in a particular area or a locality are purely involved with the agriculture. But purely out of experience, I could tell you this, and with a lot of confidence, that at one point in time, that number used to be as high as 30-35%. That there were people who were solely dependent on agriculture, were not doing anything. And this is not, I'm not talking about 50s or this is as late as even, mid 80s types. But over the last 2 decades or so, this has certainly come down. And well, it is anybody's estimate by how much has it come down. But the avenues that have opened up, particularly in the service sectors, for example, things like ATM location guards, for example, locality guards, which are things which have, or which are services which are opened up, next to rural areas. There is a lot of employment that has got generated on that part, and therefore, I would say the income earning diversification has happened within a household, thereby reducing the overall dependence on agriculture now. But yes, there is no data that can prove you that.
Okay, I would
So,
like to add here, you are absolutely right, Rahul. And this was one of the things I wanted to mention as well. When the parcel of the land, as it is getting shrunk because of the family increases and all that, people are compelled to look out for better options. And this I'm talking about in 1992 when I was with Group 4 in India. The majority of our security personnel, they used to come from this belt that you have just mentioned, Western UP, Haryana, or the agricultural, the rural areas. And the first question, even if they are illiterate or whatever, or little bit educated, कि जी हमको खेती नहीं करनी. So there was a bit of बोलते मिलता ही कुछ नहीं है. It's a tough job. You slog throughout the year, and then what you get at the end is nothing. So yes, there are people who are moving away from the agriculture, and I think that is certainly one of the challenges that remains in front of us. How to address that, because this industry or this particular profession is not yielding enough for a family to, or for a person to support his family. Now, on the same lines, when we hear that India is the largest producer of X or Y or Z, suddenly you get this, feeling of proud that, okay, we are the largest. But at the end of the day, the other side, if you look at it, we are also the largest consumer. So where is the surplus to export?
Absolutely.
And the average yield that you have shown, and the point that you made that the neighbor's production is higher than us. I mean, it is really astonishing. I mean, it was something new that I have learned today. But, it raises another question, since independence till today, we call ourselves agrarian economy. Okay, Lal Bahadur Shastri and this green revolution happened. But does it mean that post that there were not concentrated efforts made to enhance the productivity, whether mechanizing it or whatsoever? I mean, if we really keep on talking about all this and we do not allow the private sector to venture into this, I mean, over a period of time with no stoppage of the increase in the family sizes, I'm sure we are staring at very serious issues right in front of us, and it needs to be dealt with and addressed with. And I think one of the agendas of any political party when they come, like Modi was talking about the electrification of the rural areas or the villages, humne itna villages kar diya, or building of the roads. I think one of the criteria should be that we will enhance the productivity per hectare. That could also be one of the yardsticks, which would say that, okay, we have made improvement in on the agriculture front. A, shortage of people. B, the families increasing. C, dependent on the earlier workers from other states, primarily from Bihar or Rajasthan or elsewhere. But now if they go back to their states, I mean, we saw that mass exodus of these laborers from down south or from west during the time of COVID. It was a mayhem, I mean, if I can use that word. And, with all these factors taking into consideration, I mean, I honestly don't know. And Logistics, logistics is again one of the very, very important factor for agricultural distribution. We have a very, very poor distribution. FCI, I mean, okay, they keep on talking about very big that we have got this and that. I mean, I would like to share here something for the benefit of everyone. I was attending one global Indian business meet in New York, and a few years ago that was. And there we had one of the directors from FCI who was making a presentation that in India we have got these many stores across the country, and the produce is huge, and we manage it so well. We feed all the poor and this. And so he was just going gung-ho about his achievement. And then towards the end, the question answer session, I asked him 2-3 questions, and then he said, "Can we talk to you separately?" He said, "Oh, your data is not right." I'll tell you here, in 2009, I have personally visited the FCI go-downs in Kurukshetra, in the areas near Jind, Tohana, Nirvana, Lehra, and all that stuff. And I saw the FCI go-downs were absolute in a pathetic state. There was no security. There was a poor chap who was sitting there wearing kurta pajama as a security guard. And the windows of all the warehouses were broken. I even climbed on top of all those gunny bags. Anaj sad raha tha. But at the end of the day, then this IAS officer, I remember from the FCI who was there, is some Mr. Gupta. And then at the end, Gupta ji says, "Ji kya kare, sarkar ye hai, phalana hai, dimka." Then everybody just keeps on talking about the, the excuses that ye nahi ho raha. But let me share here something. This I'm talking about 2009. There was a place near Kurukshetra, and it was a brand new facility. Okay, so I was quite curious. It was right in the middle of the fields. Okay, so I told the driver, and there were 2 of my partners with me. I said, "Let's go and see what is this place." Rahul, you will not believe. This was one of the modern silos which was built by Adani then by spending 350 crores.
Absolutely.
And there the security manager was one ex-army officer, Sharma. He took me around and he has shown me it was fully automated. And the modus operandi was the tractor will come, they will use the RFID cards, they will go to the weighing bridge, they will tilt their tipper, the grain will fall through the multiple layer of the weaves, and finally the quality grain will fall at least 10 feet below the ground where they had conveyor belt. I walked myself into that because those belts were not operating. And at the speed of about 70 to 80 kilometers per hour, all that grain will be transported into the silos, which were at least about 700, 800 meters away. And just behind the silo was a railway track.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this I'm talking about 2009. So if the government is not capable of doing it and they keep on destroying, we see when the wheat is harvested, it is stacked in the field, they are covering it with the plastic, and suddenly when the rainfall happens, everything goes for a toss because the crop is spoiled and you just can't do anything with it. So I think the private sector has to take a very active role, irrespective of whatever these issues are going on. Because if you look at the India's success story, it all started post 85 when the economy opened up and the private companies came in. Of course, they have the interest to make money, right? So I mean, they make money, they improve the system, they improve the logistics. Why not? I have got a very good friend of mine here who is from Meerut and who is one of the leaders in commodity trading. He has submitted a white paper to Mr. Modi when he came about 3 years ago. But, same talking about logistics and distribution, but unfortunately, nothing has happened. It just goes in the, stacks of the files and people forget about it and they get involved with their usual party politics. But yes, it's a very grim situation. I think somebody needs to, how do we build the cat? Okay, we can talk about it, but how do we take it forward?
No, absolutely. So as I said, the problem is that of a chicken and egg. And somebody will have to, compromise his or her political, because most of it is going to be considered as political harakari kind of a thing. So somebody will who is not so bothered coming to power again might be someone who actually has the will to do it.
Yeah, probably you're right, I guess. All right. Any more questions do we have, ladies and gentlemen?
I have one more thing to say, Smriti here.
Yes.
Rahul, you said that we need to have a change in the mindset of the bureaucracy, which is actually running the show or implementing the policies to help and support the people who want to participate in the growth of rural area. At the same time, when we're talking about assessing the income or people having agriculture not as the sole source of income, just drawing a parallel to it. Long back, when this program of Rural Electrification Corporation was going on to give one light point to every house.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the time I was talking. PwC was a consultant to them at that point of time.
Yeah.
And I was working on SCADA that point with the company. And my suggestion to them was that you certainly give them one light point, but fix a meter also. And do the assessment of the consumption which is happening, even if you do a zero bill for them, just the way you do for the agricultural sector. So you do a nil bill because the electricity supply is free, but you certainly know how much you have given for free. So you do your electrical network planning, distribution planning, likewise. So the my thought was at that point of time that if you install a meter, you know the consumption, and that belief system that they are poor is not true. The reality is far away from there. With one
Yes.
light point, that wire gets extended, and it gets extended to buying two more fans, then a cooler and a refrigerator, then a washing machine and a television, then a mixie, and it goes on to various other gadgetries in the house. And
Yes.
we are simply believing that we are giving only one light point for light and fan.
Yeah.
So this is also, it's like those people are taking benefit in the garb of being poor. Likewise, is it that they don't want to show their ancillary incomes? I would call that being a guard or safai karmchari somewhere, all those kind of small jobs which are not a stable job. So they would like to show their mainstay income as the agricultural income so that they don't fall in the tax net. Is there is there some way to bring about that, whether they're taxed or not, but the income should be assessed, just the way I said the electricity consumption should be assessed, so that we do the network planning, so that likewise we can do the growth plan for the rural areas. I just want to know
Absolutely.
your thought on this.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. The problem is in this country, correct, valuation and assessment of income only happens for the salaried class. It doesn't happen for anybody else, no. So why only poor farmer is being asked to tell his actual income? It has to be everyone. But yes, a start in the right earnest has to be made. Whether they are taxed or not is nobody's, nobody's guess at this stage. But yes, somebody needs to, something like GST, which is now perforce making you somewhere accountable for your income, is something that requires to be put in place. But my only this thing is for something which I feel is a reasonably good step. You have the capital at two places jammed for over 100 days now. इमेजिन अगर किसी ने टैक्स का बोल दिया तो वो तो मतलब यहीं आके बैठ जाएंगे यार, मतलब हो जाएगा, वी विल गेट घिरावट टाइप्स.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we are done now. I don't see any more hands or anyone requesting for asking questions. So again, on behalf of everyone, Rahul, thank you so very much for this enlightening session. And you take care, and hopefully we will be back soon with the next session in next 2 weeks' time. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Rahul.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you.